This story has been recorded at an Addictive Eaters Anonymous meeting in New Zealand. You can email us at contact@aeanz.org.
So, welcome everybody to Friday night meeting. Being the first Friday of the month, we do have a speaker, and tonight it's Kay.
I'm Kay and I'm an addictive eater. Okay. I was doing the dishes with my husband tonight, and I said I was telling my story tonight, and he said, "What, again?" And I said, "Yes, that was my thought too when I was asked." It doesn't seem all that long since the last time, and I said I was thinking of telling my Fiji story. And he said, "Oh, you're lucky you've got so many stories." I said, "What do you think of that idea?" And he said, "Oh, might be a bit less boring." So I thought I'll try that anyway tonight, just to try and be a bit less boring. But I'm not sure how fluent I'll be because I haven't thought of it for a number of years. But anyway, it started off with my eating at a very young age. The disease manifested very early in me, and I was very, very different from my family, at a very young age. And food was the dominant thing in my life for all my growing up years. Keeping it a secret, everything I was doing, and no one knew what was going on in my head, but my golly, it was all there. The thinking, wanting to eat, and the stealing and the lying, started quite early as well. And it just dominated all my growing up years. And to cut that part of my story very, very short, I wasn't looking for a solution because I didn't think there was one. I thought I'd been born differently to everyone and that there was no one like me. I'd been to a weight loss club because I was overweight, and I even thought the people there, we were all there to lose weight, but they just still seemed to be very different to me. I thought I was the only one, and I only came into a 12-step food fellowship because I read something in a magazine about it, and I thought, these people sound like me, and that's what brought me in. So there was a process to that. I did not stop eating and continued to eat, not the quantities that I'd eaten before I came in, but eating just the same, the disease still active in me, until one day I got to a point of not being able to go on, and I was in the right place at the right time, at these meetings, and I turned to the people that were in recovery, and eventually I started to get well. And I totally abandoned myself to this program. I knew it wasn't just a little problem on the side of my life, so it didn't, it couldn't require a little solution on the side of my life. It had to be the most important thing in my life, and anything else that came into my life as a result of it needed to be fitted around it. And that is the way it was for a long time. I got married, had children, but it was still the most important thing in my life. And I was one of the few members that wasn't working. I was at home with the children, and so I did a lot of 12-stepping and a lot of public speaking. Both those things, it probably would have been most weeks when that I had one of those things on. And I thought that that God had sort of meant me to be the person that, that was available to do these things, so that I didn't have any thought of going back to work. And, I was very busy with the children as well. And during that time, my husband kept coming home with suggestions of places that he could have a placement with his job. And, I didn't want to live in any of those places. It was mainly Asian countries and they just didn't interest me. And I said to him one day, if we ever went anywhere overseas, to have a time over there, I would like to go to Fiji, because our children were adopted. They were Fijian Indian, and I thought it would be nice to give them the experience of their birth country. So off he goes and looks into that, although I didn't actually realise that. And all of a sudden, it was all on, quite quickly. It was all on and we were off. And no one was particularly interested in me leaving. I can remember at the time, because we had a convention. Well, I went away just about a week before, a convention here in Christchurch. And, everyone was very, very busy with that. So not long before we left, I went round to see my sponsor. And, I came out with this big thing that I'd been keeping to myself, that I was scared of eating. And she said, "Oh, thank goodness for that." Because she thought that I was just, going off and, I knew I was going to a place where there weren't meetings, and, that maybe I was doing it, lightly. And she thought, she said, "You'll be right," because I had that, because I had told her that. She said, and I believe it's because she knew that would drive me to do what I needed to do. Over there, having that fear of eating, it was a good thing. So that was a surprise. I thought, that's good. Oh, it's a good thing. Oh, that's good. Okay, so we went over there in a hiss and a roar, and true to Fiji time, our house wasn't ready. It wasn't ready for quite a long time, and things happened pretty jolly slowly. And we lived in a tiny unit, sort of like a motel unit, very, very small. They're all completely on top of each other, and it wasn't easy, adjusting to different country, different culture, different climate, plus living on top of each other, girls, obviously with their adjustments at school and things. And we didn't have a telephone, so I didn't, put an ad in the paper, and pretty much didn't do anything for the first nearly 6 months. And we didn't have much money over there, and we didn't have computers, of course, and in those days, this is a while ago now, and I, wasn't ringing my sponsor. And fortunately, well, not fortunately for Mum, she got breast cancer, but in some ways, fortunately for me, I came back to Christchurch at Christmas time for Mum's treatment and to support her, and came back to meetings here, and it was very fortunate because that gave me the jolt that I needed, very much so. I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I need to get going, and it was just being back, at the meetings with that recovery, and then by the time I went back, we got our house, and I got a phone. We got a phone, and I started putting an ad in the Nandy Times, I think it was, and started 12-stepping people. And I was also on the AA loners list, and also a recovering alcoholic, and that meant that people that came to where I was on holiday or passing through, then they contacted me, and I went and saw them just either for a cup of tea, and sometimes we had a formal meeting. So that was fabulous. That was probably about once a month or maybe a bit more. Someone contacted me, and we had a really, really good experience with one AA who came to my house, and we had a meeting out on the balcony on the outside, and he told me that he worked on an oil tanker, and the whole family in the weekend visited the oil tanker, and it turned out that he was the captain of the oil tanker. And I didn't know that and that was an amazing experience, because a few days earlier he had a horrific story. Well, I mean horrific, and it was all around the sea. And I just heard all his story a few days earlier on our balcony, and there, just seeing him in his workplace, just absolutely, and the respect that the men had for him, it was a phenomenal experience. Anyway, I also had contact with a guy in Suva, which was about 4 hours away from where I was, and once a month the family went round there, and the meeting was on a Saturday, and I went to that meeting. So, I had that little bit of contact going on there too. So once I started 12-stepping people, I looked for a venue for a meeting, which was quite a mission. Everything was a mission, because it was hot. And I went to many places, churches, and I don't sort of have community centres over there. What else did I? Schools, just places I could think of. But no one was keen to do that. Didn't seem to be what they did over there. And even the man, they had the meeting, the AA meeting. He had it in his home, so maybe he found the same around there. I think maybe theft. I think might have been the fear of theft might have been part, not theft by me, but they were just worried about. That seemed to be the churches, definitely. So anyway, our house had a sort of a little room attached to it, which was the maid's room for people that had a maid, which we obviously didn't have a maid, but it had a different entrance, and I set that up with chairs, and I had 12 Steps and Traditions banners, so I just kept them up permanently, sort of ready for my meeting. Anyway, I went out and did quite a bit of 12-stepping. Mainly Indian women. I don't think I 12-stepped any men. I did get some calls from men. There were a few men that wanted to marry me and come and live here. mainly I think to live here as opposed to marry me, but wanted to know if it was, there was going to be a possibility of us hooking up. It seemed to be, I don't think I ever got a sort of a genuine call from a man. But yeah, women, I did, and I never actually managed to get anyone along to a meeting. Looking back now, I think I may have done things differently. Of course, I wasn't talking to my sponsor about all this. You know, I've been talking to my sponsor regularly. You know, she might have said, "Oh, try this, try that." You know, but I think it was a cultural thing. Like, you know, I guess if people are bad enough, that the cultural thing wouldn't be a barrier, possibly. But it definitely, I felt, was a barrier. Definitely, a big barrier. And I might have tried to get two of the people that I was 12-stepping together, you know, as opposed to trying to get them to a meeting with me. I think I would have tried somehow to have got them together, and you know, me as well, but you know, I think they needed someone else, you know, that would have, you know, just looking back now on how I could have done things differently, there's probably plenty I could have done differently. Anyway, you know, I didn't have to eat. You know, I got through that time, and I do believe that, you know, the reserves that I was drawing on from all those meetings that I'd been to through before I went over, you know, every bit of contact that I'd had, you know, I think I had a bit in reserve, but you know, I was going through my stocks. You know, I know I was going through my stock, and from time to time I would ring my sponsor. I'm not sure, definitely not more than, I'd say maybe once a month. I would write letters, you know, lots of letters, and she wrote back, but of course I wasn't hearing what I needed to hear. You know, it wasn't the same. I was keeping her up with what I was doing, but you know, I wasn't getting what I was needed. And when I did talk to her, I knew there was something there. You know, there was something there. I always felt very uncomfortable. It wasn't that I was keeping anything. It was just nothing I could sort of put my finger on to sort of talk about. But you know, I would have been talking about what I was doing in terms of seeing people and things, the latest people that I'd spoken to. But I completely believe today that it was resentment that was sitting there, that I had just built up over whatever, you know. I was resentful towards them changing the colour of the national airline. A lot of resentment towards that. And it sounds bizarre, I know. But I was stirred up about it, and you know, I wrote letters to the paper, and we were in aviation circles. My husband worked in aviation, and I was always trying to talk to people and get them on board, you know, with this colouring, you know, should we go? I wanted to go to someone high up, you know, but I knew that I needed, you know, the weight of people behind it, you know, a few of us, you know, a lot of us needed to go, and what do you think? It's just bizarre, isn't it, this colour of the national airline? And nobody really got in there with me. Like, you know, so I never actually got to go to anyone, thank God. But, you know, I was very stirred up about it, and I was very stirred up about the pollution, the plastic bags in particular, you know, the plastic bags, the use of plastic bags over there, you know, was horrendous, and just, you know, they were just dropped everywhere. There were just plastic bags everywhere on the beaches, you know, covered with plastic bags, and it used to really distress me. And same thing, I was trying to get, you know, people on board with that to, you know, make a difference, you know. So, I mean, they were two very obvious things that I was very stirred up about, but there would have been others, because it's just the disease, I believe. I believe it's the disease. And, you know, it was only really when I came back from Fiji that I really got a good grasp of what it talks about in the big book, about how we can't afford anger and resentment. You know, I'd read that before, many times. Like, I can't afford anger and resentment. Oh, okay. But I absolutely knew when I got back, you know, and you know, got into meetings again, just how actually lethal they can be. So, you know, I mean, I'd experienced both those in quite, you know, a big way over there. So anyway, eventually, you know, we did come back, and we came back. We could have stayed. We came back, I'd like to say, because I knew that I needed to get back to meetings. I think that was part of it. We also came back for my oldest daughter's education, her secondary education. So that was definitely in our thinking too. And the family definitely thought that Mum and, you know, my husband definitely thought, and my mother-in-law definitely thought, and I think my mother definitely thought that I wouldn't be needing the meetings like I did, because I'd had all this time in Fiji without them. So, you know, I'm right now. I'm right now. And I'm very grateful that, you know, even though I was probably pretty off the beam, by the time I came back, there was no question in my mind that I needed to be back at the meetings. So I just, you know, picked up exactly, you know, where I was before. And, you know, in terms of my meetings and contact with, you know, other addictive eaters, because I was a person that had always needed a lot of that. So my husband, you know, we came back in not a good financial position, and my husband was without a job, and he looked at buying a business and ended up deciding he wanted to start a business. And he said to me, you know, he needed to do some training and things, that I'd have to get a job. And I laughed, because I thought he was joking. I just thought he was joking, because I was intending to get back into my public speaking and my, 12 stepping and that, just, you know, exactly like I had before. And he said, I'm serious. I said, what? And I don't know what I thought we were going to live on, but anyway, I didn't seem to think that he would just take care of that and I didn't need to do anything. But anyway, you know, it was necessary at that time. So I got a job that was 35 hours a week, and it was just a massive, massive change in my life. Massive. And I, my whole life actually had to revolve around trying to get to this jolly job and get children off to school. You know, they all had their stuff, and those sort of things had to change too. I couldn't take them to things after school. I told them, you're going to have to, you can only do your activities if you can get yourself there, because I can't, anything they could only bike. Fortunately my daughter hadn't started playing the bassoon at that stage, which was good, because she wouldn't have been able to get herself there. She was still on the violin, which she could carry. After that, later on, she started the bassoon. We had to find a new normal, and the program for me still had to be the most important thing. It just took a different form. And eventually, my husband started working, and I was able to, change my job. I did, carry on working, and I got a job that was less hours. I was just, better able to deal with everything in my life. I'd struggled a lot, with the 35 hours, and had a lot of sleep issues, and started developing migraines and things. It was just, a massive, massive change. So, that's, I guess, my Fiji story. It's quite a long time ago now. But life has just carried on, from there. I've continued to do the things, that I need to do. I feel a strong sense of responsibility to pass on what I've been given. I've got a very high awareness of the fact that not many people get well from this disease, and not many people recover from addictive eating for whatever reason. Sometimes, quite often I think it's maybe the last thing to go down, and food's just a thing. Everyone can eat food. It's not, people don't see it as an addictive substance, but for me it's a total disease, and I need to be put everything down in order to get well from it. I know I am beyond human aid, and I always have been. I didn't seek too much human aid before I decided that nothing could help me. I know a lot of people in Addictive Eaters Anonymous do try a lot of different things, but that wasn't my experience. I came in when I was quite young. But I absolutely know today that there is a power greater than myself that is doing for me what I cannot do for myself, and it is stopping me eating. And for me, my higher power works through the fellowship. Very, very much so. I don't believe I could go off, God and I off, and be able to, carry on getting well. And at the same token, it's not just enough for me to attend these meetings. It's a total package. There's very much, there's a lot to it, and it all works together. But it is the power from my higher power that has actually stopped me eating and enabled me to get well. So I'm grateful today, and it hasn't been hard for me. That's the great joy. It's not hard for me to come to meetings. It's not hard for me to talk to another addictive eater on the phone. It's just not. I'm so fortunate that I want to do what I need to do. And I believe that's a gift from my higher power as well. So it's all here for me. I personally haven't needed to go out and look anywhere else in my time in recovery, which has been a number of years now. I haven't needed to go and seek answers for anything elsewhere. For me, the answers are all here. And I get to them, eventually through the program. So I think that's all. I hope it hasn't been too boring. I'd like to be able to report to my husband that it wasn't too boring. Thanks.